Hello and welcome to another episode of Growing Guelph. As always, I'm your host, Jordan Sloggett. And on this episode, I'm joined by 4 members of CFUW Guelph. It was formerly known as the Canadian Federation of University Women, but to include all women, not just university women, it's now just CFUW. The guests are Sandra McCormick, Sonia Spekkens, Susan Brown, and Deb Thompson. And in this episode, we talk about how they found connection, belonging, and lifelong learning through the group, as well as CFUW's work on issues including climate change, basic income, gender-based violence, and so much more. It was a good conversation, one where I learned a lot about this club's legacy of bringing motivated, driven women together. So let's jump right into that interview right now. Today on the Growing Guelph podcast, we have kind of an interesting episode. We're going to do it in 2 parts because I have 4 guests with me here. Joining me for the first half of the conversation is Sandra McCormick and Sonia Spekkens. Sandra, Sonia.
Hello, Jordan.
Hi.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. I should also say that Susan Brown and Deb Thompson are also here in the room. They're just kind of sitting on the futon in the back of the room, but they'll be joining us for the second half of the conversation. We kind of gave everyone permission. If you guys want to shout and speak, you're more than welcome to. But for this first half of the conversation, we'll mostly be talking to Sandra and Sonia. So I'm excited to kind of get into both of you, or all 4 of you, I should say, and your roles and the organization. But just kind of with a quick intro, do you want to just tell the audience about who you are, what's your role in CFUW Guelph, and kind of what drew you to the organization?
Yes, I'm going to start. This is Sandra speaking, because I'm the longest time member, and so I've seen the club in a lot of different ways. I joined in '83 and have been a member consistently since then, and was a member in Peterborough before that. I've participated in lots of different ways, from friendships to the interest groups to executive positions to different projects we've had. I've seen the club change a lot and be consistent in its main goals, I'd say.
Very cool.
So I joined since the 90s, and I was new to Guelph. Knew about the University Women's Club from my time in Burlington. Did not join it there, but joined here. Found the group here extremely inviting. Very good group. I started on the executive as well. They always recruit new people. I don't know why. And then I got busy with work, so just stayed with the interest groups and continued with those friendships.
And
Very
one
cool.
thing that Sonia said that we have in common is that we both joined when we first moved to Guelph, because it's a great way to meet people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It feels like that's something that's changed over time, is that people move, and it's not that people just still don't have clubs and that, but I don't know, it's something like my generation and I think younger have just lost a little bit of that, like those strong social institutions and those clubs of like connection. It's easy to connect online now, but it's completely different than
For sure. There's so many ways of connecting. I mean, even when I was the president, I tried to get my daughter, who's like closer to your age than, and she said, I get a lot of things in other places. I'm busy. I've got my kids. Where we joined when we had our kids young, in 1983, even had a group called Moms and Tots, which we don't need anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I wonder if we don't need that, because I often think that the young people have the connection online, but they don't have the one-on-one connection with people and doing things together.
Yeah, I kind of meant that we didn't have the same kind of maternity benefits.
Yes.
Right.
We didn't have daycare, and only now the CFUW clubs across Canada have been writing letters and trying to get daycare since the 1970s, and finally it's here in Ontario, in its earlier stages. But for those reasons, mothers have more freedom to start back into their careers more quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's an interesting wrinkle of just modern.
The changes over the time.
Yeah, and I should say, kind of talked about this before we started recording, but it's interesting. I will do what I can to provide my opinion and perspective on this, but obviously this club and a lot of what your efforts are is about women, and I am not a woman. I don't know that experience. So obviously I'll defer to what your, expertise and your viewpoints and things like that. But it is just an interesting, like, I've heard a lot of people kind of discuss that, like, with modern feminism and things like that, it's like we've given women more opportunities and more things to do, but it's like we've just added things to their plate, right? Where it's like you can have a career, but there's still the pressure on you to, like, take care of the home, and there's still the pressure on you. And, like, I think some men are kind of, like, stepping up into that, but it's by no means an equal share. So
but it's changed a lot,
yeah,
your generation from our generation,
which is a good thing. That
my sons-in-law would be considered saints in the 70s. Now it's just normal.
My mother-in-law, she's a listener of this podcast, Jane, and there's been some, like, if I'm helping in the kitchen and my wife, like, complains about something, she'll often just say, like, just be happy that he's doing something in the kitchen, and, like, which is a low bar to raise, but like, steps, right? Everyone's making steps in one way. So we kind of talked about this before we started recording, but we should address it up front that the organization is now known by just the acronym, right? CFUW, but that used to stand for what? Canadian
Federation of University Women.
Gotcha.
And it was started, I don't know if this is the time to talk about it, but 1919, right after World War I. A lot of women with university degrees found that they were being used a lot during the teens, the 19-teens, and
when all the men were shipped overseas, and
as soon as the war was done, they didn't want to waste all of their talents, whether it was writing or speaking or organizing volunteer groups, and that's when, and right around the world, not just in Canada, university women started forming groups and volunteering in their worlds. Yes,
it's interesting, like the huge ramifications that both world wars have had that are still, like, very present in today's societies, and how we, like, in World War II saw that too. There was, like, the Rosie the Riveter all that, but then there was sort of like a backlash after both of those, like, especially World War II, where it was like, okay, we can let women work in factories, but then after the war it was like it was almost like there was a panic in the other direction, where it was like, let's get back to family values, Norman Rockwell, like, let's pretend like all these things never really happened, and then it was like the women's place was not in that thing, and, like, let's focus on, and it was just this, like, backlash, and it was almost like they had to fight against that because so many women were given a taste of, like, earning their own wage and earning, like, the empowerment of working and things like that. And, like, they worked in the wars, they worked, like, but
in terms of this name, like, you probably could speak to that more than I could in the vote and all of that.
So the decision to just use the acronym, they were looking to change the name to some other thing, and at the national executive level, they finally just decided that it was easier just to use the acronym, basically because they were trying to invite women who are like-minded, not just women who have university degrees, to join and do the things that we are very passionate about, whether it's advocacy, whether it's interest groups, or whether it's raising money for scholarship, whether it's giving money to the community, those kinds of things. You don't need a university education to be part of that.
That's interesting. I guess it originally probably would have been a little bit of a class divide too, right? Like, especially in 1919, not everyone attended university.
That's right.
So there would have been maybe more of, like, a professional class. Like, I'm guessing it was a lot of, like, the daughters and wives of professionals, doctors, who were fortunate enough to go to school in the first place.
The members themselves started talking about this in the 70s and 80s, and then by the 90s, like, this is ridiculous. It's too elitist. Because it did start with that reason, the education being a big piece of it. But it was good that the women themselves who were members came to the conclusion that this doesn't make sense anymore, 70 years later, come on. And to open, as you say, to like-minded women, anybody who wants to help in their communities or get to know each other, develop their own education through the club.
And the organization is all across Canada?
Yes.
Are there, like, provincial divisions, or is it more like chapter by city?
There are provincial divisions. We have an Ontario Council, CFUW Ontario Council, and many of the other provinces have those as well. But I think we have about 7,200 women nationally that belong to the organization.
And do you know how many worldwide? I don't know what that number is. No, but just about every well, not, I shouldn't say every country, but every continent has countries that are
Right.
involved. Yeah.
I was gonna. That was my next question. Was if there was an American equivalent, and
Yes.
is there still like a opportunity for like connecting and meeting with those? Like, is there like a
Yes.
international?
There's an
Yeah.
international organization in Geneva,
Mhm.
and they have triennial conferences that you can participate in if you choose to. They have various activities that they support globally, raise money, and do a lot of educational outreach.
And it really is a huge voice if you see something politically that you feel, well, kind of like daycare, having that covered. The letter writing campaigning and stuff, there's real change because of the women who belong to these clubs. Legal change, not constitutional, but government bills get behind. People have to agree. It's nonpartisan. You can't belong to a club and then voice your own political, not what I meant by that is that a particular club doesn't support a particular political party.
Right. It's not meant to be like just a mouthpiece of what that.
Yes,
right?
We discuss things that we think should change. I mean, in terms of resolutions, you could probably talk to that, or maybe
maybe one of the others will talk about that, the resolutions that we are participating in.
Yeah.
So at the national level, I'll leave it to the others, but they do have resolutions that individual clubs come up with and present to the national level, and then we as individual clubs in Canada review those resolutions, determine whether or not we agree with them as a club, and then we vote at the annual general meeting to determine whether that's going to move forward to the next level.
And if we do agree, then we can write to our governments as a CFUW member, saying that CFUW supports this.
So there's like a whole process in place to, so that
like
when it's speaking, so that everyone's on. There's consensus, so that when,
yes.
Otherwise I guess it would make sense that like one group could get sort of taken over or become the mouthpiece of just
That's right,
one
or I
person's.
could just say, I'm a CFUW member and I'm writing to the government for this reason, and not, you can't use the name of the club, personally.
Yeah, I guess if you don't protect the voice of organizations like that, then they can get kind of watered down and be less substantial. So, I mean, we kind of already talked about this already, but when a lot of maybe people hear university women, they might assume it's only for like academics or that it's academic based. But how do you describe CFUW Guelph today, and who do you think should feel welcome?
The interesting thing is it's never been an academic organization. That is, like, a lot of people think we're connected to the University of Guelph because it's Guelph, CFUW.
Yeah.
It's not about studying academically or, working on something academically. It's, as I said, 1919, you had to have a university degree. It's just the CFUW name, which clubs voted on whether or not to come up with a new name, which may have made it easier had they, but...
I think it's networking as well.
Yes.
I think it's networking with other women. I think it's getting to learn about different professions that they're involved in, regardless of the profession, and encouraging different guest speakers to come so we expand our knowledge base, and friendship, frankly. Lots of friendship.
Really learn a lot. Not only just about what's going on in the world. The speakers are wonderful. They cross every interest you can imagine.
They have a program committee that determines and invites the speakers with their group. Susan happens to be the one who is the chair of that program committee.
It sounds like, this has come up before on this podcast where a common theme of the show is the lack of third spaces. And I'll repeat it again, just even though it comes up all the time. A third space is defined as like, if your first space is your home, second space is often work. A third space is a place that you can belong to, that there's no obligation to spend money there. So like golf courses and that don't really count as third spaces because you're paying to be part of that club. Right. But this place, and traditionally a common third space that connected communities together was church. I'm someone who kind of grew up in the church, the Catholic Church, and I've moved away from that. But I do find that was so much like good in the community, in the way that a group of people can be like bound together, values-wise, bound together by like, and like you talk about bringing in the public speakers and things like that. Like that's really interesting. And when I've sort of thought in my head, like, well, if you took all the good things about church and like remove some of the negative elements or some of the dogmatic elements, and you just wanted to replace it with the community elements. Like it sounds like your group, like and I also think that it's perfectly fine that there's an element of exclusion to it, in that like if it was open to absolutely everyone, like I should say men, then like well, one, men would probably take it over. Like
there is a men's club in town to which my husband belongs.
The men, like we
and honestly, Jordan, we would not be afraid of the men taking it, because we wouldn't let that happen.
Well, I mean, men already have like there's the amount of like traditional men's groups, like the Masons, that I believe they're men only, right? Yeah, like men have no shortage of places and groups and things like that to go to, so it makes sense that are there any other women specific clubs that are in that space?
Zonta has a club of women, so that's one of them, and there's also the 100 Women Who Care, so
There used to be Women in Guelph Networking.
Yes, Women in Guelph Networking. I did belong to that for
that was more of a business connection.
Yeah.
And when you say that if you let anybody join, basically anybody, woman can join.
When I said that, I was just referring to men, basically.
No, I know.
That, like,
but there are agreement on like purposes. And again, Deb and Susan will talk more to that. But we do agree on wanting to help our community. Mm-hmm. We do agree on wanting to support scholarships. And again, I'll leave that. I agree with Sonia. It's also about friendship.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. I chair the snowshoeing group. I chair the euchre group. I chair the cycling group.
You're part of hiking.
Part of hiking. Part of my book club.
Yes, book groups. I mean, youth and anybody can start a group if there's interest. It can be a discussion group. It can be an activity group. And that is outside of the general format of a speaker every month. Working towards fundraising if we need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So you were kind of getting into what my next question was going to be, but before we get to that, I thought I should just ask, like, so what's the general structure of it? Like, obviously there's a lot of different groups within this larger group. Do you meet at a particular place every once a month?
Yes.
Or
yes,
we
that
rent
kind of
a
rotate?
hall.
Okay.
And that's changes as we need to change it.
I'm sure, like as the size of the membership changes. And,
so we have 117 members, I think, at this point. 117 members. We used to have more many years ago when the women were still around and younger.
But we rent.
We're one of the most viable clubs in
COVID made a difference.
COVID did make a difference.
Yeah. Did you go to like a virtual club for a little bit, like everyone else in the world
did? And the one
good
thing that happened during COVID is that we now know, almost personally, it feels like, members from right across Canada. Yes. Because we could open our meetings and say, if you want to join in, or you have an expertise on this, and all of a sudden we were meeting people from Vancouver clubs in small towns in Newfoundland and places across the prairies.
Yeah, I guess that's like speakers. Once you're gone virtual,
it was a positive part of
like the geographic distances get broken down, and now it's just like who's most willing to engage in those kind of online platforms and things. Sure. Well, that sounds pretty neat. Like so you'd kind of already touched on
we didn't finish though. About what does the club look like?
Yeah.
I'll let you continue. So
the club has a business component, obviously, and then we have the advocacy component, and we have the scholarship component. So those are our two etched in stone constitutional requirements to make sure that we're a viable club and continue with our charter. Mm-hmm. And then the interest groups are just subsequent to that. They're important, but they're not the raison d'être of the club. I guess in the sense that constitutionally they are from the point of interest and friendship.
So you talked about how the club has shrank a little bit over time. Do you know if that's something that's happened across the board to like all the various chapters?
Yes, it has.
Yes, it has.
And maybe this would be more in like better like for a later section, but we can kind of touch upon it now. Like, you must have a lot of discussions internally about like how do you reverse the flow of that, right? Like, it's not like there's less women in the world to join.
Come up over really not just now, not just since COVID.
Right.
Like every once in a while, people will talk about it.
And I think it speaks to what you had said earlier, and what Sandra alluded to, is that the younger people today, you've got both working and have to work in order to make sure that you have that cost of living requirement covered, and they have other ways of communicating that perhaps our generation didn't have.
Yeah.
But what we have found is that many of the women always say, when I retire, I'm joining because I want to join your interest groups. I want to do things and give back to the community. I didn't have time before. Now I have the time.
I wonder, too, if there's an element of... I don't know this exactly to be a fact, but my impression is that there used to be more of a segregation along, like, gendered lines about, like, when it came to friend groups and socializing, where, like, men had their, like, other men friends, and they'd hang out and they'd do like activities together, and there were same thing for women. Women had their friends and they would connect, but there was socializing between families. But it seems like, from maybe just my impression, like my generation is a little bit more like interconnected in that way, where there's more friendships across gendered lines, where men will have friends who are women, women will have friends that are men. Like I know people my age that like their wedding parties, for example, were mixed, where like a woman would have men in her maid of honor, like
I can't
as
really
friends.
speak
And
to that. Like our generation was pretty open, but maybe the one before us.
yeah,
because I have many male friends, and I know you guys all do too.
And
And
but then it just speaks to us as being open people, and I don't know if all women would be of that ilk. I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know.
Yeah,
we grew up at a time. I mean, being a teen in the '60s, we just thought.
And it was a transition phase.
Yeah.
It was transitioning from the really traditional to the somewhat.
Yeah, but
and
certainly my mother, someone born in the '30s, did not have male friends.
No,
well, that's what I do
yeah,
think
but that was
like
a long time ago.
your generation, paved the way for whatever freedoms of like expression and freedoms of how we conduct ourselves, and even living with a partner and not being married and things like that. Like my wife and I never even thought of that. Like before we got married, we were living together and we never even really considered it as a thing.
Yeah, there was no stigma.
But it was still like an echo of the stigma, where we knew of like, friends' parents who would kind of jokingly say like, "Oh, you guys are living in sin," and we're like, "Oh yeah, I guess that was a concept," but like that was something that your generation like grew up with and then had to
and let it go.
Change. So.
And fight to let it go, actually. Fight to let it go.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy, right? Like, even if your generation was embracing some of those ideals, there's the momentum of history is still carried forward. Yeah. I mean, even into today,
some
right?
Some places it's going backward.
Yeah, it's not, progress is not necessarily a steady path forward. It's sometimes 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So I know some of the stated goals of the club are, like, advancing women's status and human rights, encouraging members to use their experience in the community, supporting education, building friendship and cooperation. Which of those like goals do you think kind of feels most alive in the Guelph Club right now? And
well,
why
I'm going to have
think?
to ask in terms of names. I can't think. Clara Merritt. The first 2 council women in Guelph were members of CFUW Club, the club here, and the club's always encouraged information about boards. I remember when I was a younger member, I never even thought about applying to some of the boards, and then I ended up being on the Guelph Arts Council board for 6 years. That kind of encouragement has definitely come through our club. And again, they'll talk more about this, but there have been days set up to tell people how to run for government. And we now have an MP who started in one of those groups that was started by CFUW, Dominic.
Oh yeah, I had her on this podcast.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and it was right after the election, essentially.
She came to one of the electoral. I can't think of the term that we call it. The school.
Sorry? Better ballot?
Oh yeah,
better ballot.
Yes.
Okay.
And different city councilmen had different rooms, and you could take these little tutorials. And from there, she decided to run for city council, and a number of CFUW members helped her with that campaign, and now she's our MP. So those there are direct results from club membership getting involved.
Yes,
in,
I'm
you know,
trying to
in the
think
city.
of the names as well, and I can't remember it. But
Yep, Claire
one of
Merritt
them
was one of them.
whose
Yeah.
daughter passed away, was a police officer.
Oh, Gloria Kovac.
Yes,
Yeah.
Gloria Kovac. She was
Okay.
also a member of CFUW, and that
And it's-
also she was encouraged to run for
Yeah.
for council.
Well, it sounds like if you're an ambitious woman in Guelph, why wouldn't you want to be involved? Like, your club has fewer than, did you say it was like 100 and something members?
117.
And if I assume Guelph is about 50% female, then like you're still like not even 1% of the, you're like
it's
less
true.
than.
But those women do so much.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
Like, it's
I mean, if anybody's listening, and it has, you don't have to feel intimidated as well, that you have to be somebody who wants to run for city council, or you could just be somebody who wants to learn about that and join a book group.
Yeah.
As a new member,
There's
she was
so
a
many-
rower before. So
yeah.
as a rower, I met her, encouraged her to come and join, and she joined, and she's a very active member. She's wonderful to have with our club, and quite dynamic. So those kinds of people, once they learn and they see the fellowship and the friendship, she belongs to the advocacy group now, and she's quite involved with that. So there's people learn, people enjoy, and people embrace those that wish to do that.
Have any of you belonged to the club in other cities, like other, is it called chapters? Sorry?
Chapters, yeah.
Chapters,
Is that what they
yeah.
call it? Yeah, I did in Peterborough.
Yeah.
I was a new mom, and we had just moved from out west where I had been teaching, and all of a sudden I was at home. I was on a fellowship to finish my dissertation. And I thought, I don't know anybody. And I was in the library with my daughter, Buggy, and I saw a bulletin board and it just said, this is what we're doing, and if you'd like to meet with our group. And I went and I joined immediately, and I joined a book group, and I helped with a project they were doing. And
You said it was like 83?
that was 1981, and then I
Okay.
moved to Guelph in 1983, and I didn't look for a sign. I just phoned and said, "There's got to be, a chapter here," and joined immediately because it had been such a positive experience in Peterborough where I knew no one. And it doesn't even have to be if you don't know it. I mean, we all have full lives outside of CFUW.
Yeah.
Friends, and I've got siblings, and my children, and so this is just as you say, what did you call it, third?
Like a third space that you can belong to?
Yes, it's another place to find not only like-minded people, but people that can really talk about ideas and really generally enthusiastic, wanting to do stuff.
Yeah.
It's great.
Willing to do stuff, willing to take that little step that other people might be a little bit more cautious about taking, and you find like-minded people that are interested in doing that, and will jump off that bridge with you.
Yeah. Now, I cannot believe all the things that I've learned over all those years, not only about ideas, but technology. It kept changing because I've been a member for 4 decades. It kept changing, and then some members would form little groups and teach other members about how to do this or how to use that, or how to, I don't know, send documents more easily back in the 90s, and everybody throws in their own abilities. There came a time where we thought, we really need some policies and procedures because we keep reinventing, and so a group got together and just wrote those things up. The people that like doing that kind of thing, and yeah, it's just the club has allowed me and its members, I think, to develop skills they might not have, which is, and definitely friendships.
Yes. Yes, Zoom was a very big learning curve.
Oh yes, it was.
Yeah.
And just this is a small thing. I just thought of it when we're talking. We moved from using a chalkboard, you guys weren't around, to then buying a projector and having a laser pointer. Oh my God! And then using a keyboard eventually, and now it's like
Now we do hybrid Zoom meetings.
yes,
Right.
but that's over several decades. But I can just remember each of those steps. Like yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess that makes sense. Just like the progression of technology through those, like
Yes,
through the
during
decades,
that
like you were
time.
saying, like it's I mean, I try to pride myself as a millennial. Like when I was born, I didn't have internet. I've kind of grown up with technology, but it still is jarring for me to, like when you said you didn't have to phone because you saw it. It made me realize, like, oh right, how would you know about the existence of a group like that
I
with
know.
other than the physical? Like, I think it's it's so easy to just take for granted how accessible the world is in some ways. Today. In other ways, today.
And I think every generation has done that. I mean, I remember my parents, if we didn't have a TV at first, and I had a party line.
We had a party line.
You might not even know what that is.
A party line is when you don't have your own phone line in the house. It's several houses will share a line, but then you have to be like good neighbors to each other, because it's like they used to have like commercials that would be like, no, you have to be responsible with your party line, like, or like take messages for other people or things like that, right? Like,
it does just keep changing, but I do think that our generation had to learn a lot. It kept happening so quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad went from an icebox to a fridge. That's not a big change, We went from party lines to, cell phones where you could see each other across the world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't seem like technology is slowing down at all, but the rate of change of like the 20th century was wild, right? Like someone born at the beginning of the century could have witnessed the first airplane, like first man-made flight,
for sure,
and then witnessed the moon landing in their within their lifetime, and then it's the internet, and then and now it just continues to accelerate. So, but I guess they almost felt the same way about technology in the 19th century as well, right? Where they were like, what's going on? Like this, like electricity and
what are the blacksmiths going to do?
Yeah. We got to throw the printing presses into the river because,
Anyway, I didn't mean to get on the technology tangent, but the club has really helped me. I mean, I left university at a time, teaching university at a time when, we had just got our first email addresses. It's so strange.
Well, it is the importance too of that, like surrounding yourself with people who want to progress and want to not be stuck in their ways.
Want to learn what's coming,
like in a lot of ways you are who you surround yourself with and who you engage with socially. So if you people can get stuck in a rut. Like if they don't have a friend group or a social group that will do that for them, then it's easy to not embrace new things, and not embracing today's new thing. Like that's all well and good for the first couple years of it, but then as time just keeps on marching on.
I know, and if you don't use those things that you're learning, you can forget them fast.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of saw that between my parents, my mom was able to embrace technology more than my dad ever did, and just he never got the hang of email, and he never made it part of his life, and it's just if you don't do that, then the further
the gap
it's almost
the
gulf just gets wider and wider and wider, and you begin to be I'm never going to catch up. It's never it's too hard.
And I have to say the members at CFUW are so open to helping each other. I remember my husband and I started a business in the 90s, and I said, I'll do a newsletter. And I didn't know how to do all the different parts. And one of the members, Margaret Hall, she said, I'll just come over to your house a few times a month, and I'll show you how to edit it and how to use your computer better. And that's the kind of thing that happens. When you're with a group of women all with these different skill sets, and then they share them. I mean, maybe at work that doesn't always happen, because all those years I taught, all my colleagues did the same thing.
And being in the same workplace, people can make great friendships at work. People can share things at work, but there is this hidden incentive of am I going to be there's just these.
I know exactly.
It's not greediness, but it's some of it's just if I give away all my knowledge and secrets, then am I losing my value here in the organization?
Totally
or it's the fact that it's someone's livelihood puts this incentive in place that it's a barrier to true open friendship and sharing, or at least it can be for some people.
This group. We don't have
we don't have
that. We don't
you're
have those
just
kind
there
of cross ties. Yeah.
So if someone joined and followed the group around for a month, what kinds of things do you think they'd see? What are some of the activities, programs, and groups that make up the experience of being part of the group?
So I think it depends on the interests. So I'm an outdoorsy person, so anything outdoorsy I embrace with passion. But I also like reading. I also like art, so there's an art appreciation group that visits various museums. If that's what you like to do, then join the group. So I tend to encourage people to come and try, even if they're not members, to come and have an experience, to come out on an outing with us. See if you like the ladies, see if you like what we're doing, and if you do, try something else.
And also, if anyone's interested and they contact anybody who's a member, their name moves quickly. Like I've just recently met a young woman who's a veterinarian here in Guelph, and she came from Afghanistan with her family about 7 years ago. And she said, I'd be kind of interested. And before I knew it, like somebody had reached out to her, and they're going to invite her to the next speaker, and it's a very friendly, kind of situation.
It sounds like, the group is really, like, the bedrock of the group are the kinds of people who, sort of someone at, like, a party who introduces you to other people,
yes.
or says, like, oh, you should talk to so-and-so because you both garden, or you can share plants, or, like...
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And it sounds like the wider group is really just a framework for all of these other social groups, right? And then once you join that larger group, like, you can... kind of
funnel your way
like if you're retired or you have a lot of time and energy, you can join every other group, right? Or if you just want to join one or two, then you can. And
there are lots of opportunities to help with a larger organization if you want to. I mean, it's all volunteer things, but I mean, for a few years I was on what we were talking about, resolutions. Those are ideas that the group as a whole agree or disagree on, and somebody has to assess them. And so I joined the national group to assess ones that were coming in from all the different provinces. So it's really easy to do whatever kind of interest that you have. Just as an interest groups, just go to the speakers once a month and start getting to know people. Start some interest group that you want to start, or get involved in the bigger organization nationally or provincially. Just as it offers anything that somebody might want to do.
Whatever your passion is, you have an opportunity to participate.
I was just going to say that we are sort of social media conscious as well, because we now have a website and Instagram page and a Facebook. So people can also find us in those areas.
Yeah, I guess that's an important consideration, is just as new members join, they'll bring the skills and the ways that they want to communicate, right? So like the people who, are probably best at, I don't say old school, but the more like newsletter style of writing, or the people who, newspaper was really big for them. Like they're the ones that can speak that language versus like the people who want to, for example, the four of you wanted to connect with, or were okay with connecting with this podcast. So like, some people are okay speaking about things. Other people like to really consider and put together a presentation and things like that. So everyone kind of has different skill sets of how they like to talk about the group.
Yeah, when you talk about newsletters, we used to have a paper newsletter that we would mail.
Yeah.
I mean, now, of course, it's online, But,
yeah.
There are a lot of changes. And that's often with younger members coming in and teaching.
Spearheading that.
Yeah, spearheading it.
Which is great.
So your membership spans like a pretty big age range, I'd have to imagine. And you have groups that like meet regularly, including, as far as I understand, like book groups, music groups, hiking, gardening.
I brought the blue book that you can look across it when it's your turn. I'll just slide it on the desk.
Yeah, we can have a look at some of those together. But what do you think those social connections like do for people, and anything that benefits people does benefit the wider community too, right? So like,
but for the individual, I mean, socializing for the brain, for your emotional health, psychological health.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know how important that is. What would you say, Sonia?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the key things, that people want that connection. They want that social human connection and the friendship. And oftentimes as you get older, the friendships are a little bit more difficult to have, whether it's through death, whether it's through moving away, whatever the reasons are, changing of your career. You don't have that same network that you had when you were working, so you want this network to grow with as you're in your later years, or even as you're in your younger years. The ones that are working are still looking for something other than. So even when I was working, I attend all the general meetings, but I stuck to my book group forever, 30 years. Book group.
That's right.
But I had no time to go and attend the meetings because I was busy with my career. But now I'm not, and so I have far more time.
That's interesting. I guess, is there anything else specific for you two, Sonia, Sandra?
Yeah, I would just, the last thing I'd say is, you said if somebody followed you around, I think if there was somebody who just joined, what they might find out is that they just go once a month and hear the speaker, and that night talk with people. They might do something twice a month if they join a group. It's not all, it doesn't take over your life.
It's not a cult that you have to sell your sign on the line and empty your bank account into, right?
And if you don't want to go to the monthly speaker, there's nobody checking.
But it sounds like you can give as much to it that you want, right? Like if you want to say, oh, I can go every 3 months.
Yes, absolutely.
You can. Or if you want to say like, hey, I want to join every club and I'm there, then you can be there for that too.
I don't mean to make this comparison, but remember high school? You could go as often as you wanted, or for after school activities.
That's true.
But
everyone goes to the what you get out of it is what you kind of put into it and what you want to get out of it.
Basically it.
But probably time for us to
move on to the other two.
So, but I mean, before we do, there's and we can always cut this question if you're not comfortable answering it. But I'm curious just because it's something that's kind of new in the culture of has the group had any discussions about the inclusivity of what it means to the definition of a woman? Has been something that culturally has been kind of talked about for the first time, or not the first time I should say, but more so.
No, just so I understand, are you talking about gender transition?
Yeah, in that idea. The idea of...
You're not going to find a more open group. I mean, we talk about everything.
Yeah.
And we have over many decades.
We actually have a policy at the national level that deals specifically with that.
Okay, so is that if someone identifies as a woman, they are welcome to join? Yeah, that's interesting.
If they identify as a woman.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with the whole... I even was sort of guilty of saying it at the beginning of it's a new thing. Trans people are not a new thing.
No,
they've always been around. Even if the people who think it's a new thing, you're just not aware of
No, it's not something that somebody invented.
Yeah,
it's natural to the human person.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's good to know too.
Yes,
that inclusivity.
Absolutely. You can ask us anything, Jordan.
Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't have tried to hesitate that much in the. You just never know with subjects like that. It can be triggering for some people and just ideas like that. But
and we have definitely had speakers on everything. Remember that one woman was on sexual. I can't remember about keeping your sexual activity alive throughout life.
Yeah,
I mean, we've had speakers on everything from going to Alaska to probably before your time. We've had. Stephen Lewis's daughter. We just had Sally Armstrong, who helped with the doctor from Afghanistan get her book published. I mean, we've had wonderful speakers.
She was our guest speaker for our 80th anniversary.
Yes. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I mean, well, it's no wonder that if you start with this core of highly educated people who are eager to connect, that's not going to be the kind of group that is closed-minded. It's going to be the kind of people who want to continuously broaden horizons, bring in new ideas, explore new topics. So, I guess that's good to hear. And, not surprising given what the roots of the foundation and the organization are.
No, true, yeah.
All right. Well, Sandra, Sonia, thank you both for this part of the conversation. If you're okay we can switch into have our next two guests.
Yes. Thank you, Jordan.
Yeah, thanks so much. And again, feel free to shout from the couch if you have anything to add to that next part. But, so we're going to hop into the second part of the this wider interview. This time I'm speaking to Susan Brown and Deb Thompson. Susan, Deb, thanks for joining for this second half of the conversation, and thanks for waiting patiently. And people have already heard your voices a little bit, but before we go into the questions, can I just get you both to kind of introduce yourselves briefly about who you are and your connection to the group? Susan?
Well, I'm Susan, and I'm probably I'm not the youngest member, but I have only been a member for 11 years. So I joined because I had a friend who was in a book club. I'd retired and I wanted to be in a book club. And that was why I joined. And it was the best thing I ever did. And now I've moved through a number of iterations through the club. But earlier you were talking about it not, people didn't have to do everything. But my weeks are so busy with CFUW activities that it's kind of embarrassing because I join so many things and I enjoy so much of the fellowship of the club.
Yeah. I guess that's probably not that unique of a, well, I shouldn't say not unique, but like that idea of once you open your life to something like this, there's just that opportunity where you suddenly find like there's more than you could even expect, like the amount to give and the amount to receive from a club like this, right?
Agreed.
Yeah. And Deb?
Hi, Jordan.
Hi.
Thanks for the invite today.
Yeah.
So I've been involved with CFUW Guelph for probably about 13 years.
Okay.
And the first meeting I went to was because of my friend Sandra McCormick. She said, come to a meeting. You'll see an interesting speaker, hear an interesting speaker. You'll meet lots of really cool women in the community. And there are refreshments, and it'll be fun. And so that's all it took to get me through the door.
Was she right? When did all those things come to fruition?
She was so right. So I immediately became involved with the hospitality committee as part of the club. And then from there, I learned of something that was happening. It was a forum to promote childcare in the community. So I thought, that sounds interesting, and I went to a meeting, and it was an advocacy meeting, and I was really impressed because I thought these ladies are really hands-on. They really want to do something. These club members are active. And
more than just talk. It's
it's talk, and then what do we do after that to make it come to life? And so that was advocacy. I just kind of grew into that naturally in the club, and so I'm now involved on the advocacy committee.
Very cool. So speaking of that advocacy, the advocacy work of the club, my understanding, it like includes engaging policymakers, raising awareness, partnering locally. How do you guys decide, like, and I'm going to say guys, when I say how do, and I totally mean guys in the colloquial sense that, my generation uses often, but how do you, how do you choose?
We use it too.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair. Yeah. How do you decide what to take on and like what does impact look like? So how do you choose what to focus on and how do you know the impact that focus is having?
So I would say our advocacy priorities are guided by the national CFUW resolutions, which Sonia and Sandra have already alluded to. So they are ideas that come from across the country, then they're discussed, they're debated, they're voted on and supported and accepted. And after that happens, then clubs can then advocate. So we can write letters to our governing leaders, we can sign petitions, we can help to create awareness in the club and in the community. And so that's what we, that's kind of what we do. And we also are very member driven. So the ideas that are percolating around the club with the members, how are they seeing their lives? What's happening in their lives? What are they interested in? What's come up that's really kind of helping them to be aware of what's going on? And so we listen to that, and we we take our focus from the members.
I think also we network with other local groups related to issues for which we have a commonality. For instance, Zonta, Women in Crisis, we do the International Women's Day event, and now I'm going to forget some others, but and we've done that for many years. And before I joined CFUW, I was involved in Guelph in a variety of other ways, and I always thought it was so interesting how you had this communion of community groups with similar ideas who are able to impact public opinion. I mean, it's pretty dramatic.
Well, especially, I mean, as we said before, the impact that you're able to have with the relatively small numbers of people. I mean, it just kind of shows that like you've really attracted impactful. I don't know, it's not just important, but like people who have like a more of an impact than just like their single vote as a person in Guelph. Like people who are change makers, women who are involved in communities and like influential. It sounds like.
And we have a common purpose most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all of the time,
All
I'd
of the
say,
time,
with the
yeah.
partners that we are working with. And I think at the moment we're basically looking at some really interesting issues. One of them is guaranteed basic income.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is working on climate change. Another one is gender-based violence, and these are issues that are not going away, and so we're focusing on those constantly.
And I would add that Deb's group, the advocacy group, are this year submitting a resolution to national on disinformation because of the times we live in and the impact of that on everybody's life.
Yeah.
And how easy it is to be taken in.
This came up, this topic in I had a couple recent episodes with 3 episodes actually with the library here in Guelph, and just like disinformation is it's almost wild how commonplace it is, and like the tools that people now have, like malicious actors have, like AI and things like that, where you can spin up disinformation that just looks credible. And it like the amount of skills that people need, like not only do they have to have a foundation of this sort of skills to, media literacy to spot that kind of disinformation, but you almost need to be constantly on your toes for the fact that like someone is trying to either scam me or change my opinion about something, or like sway my opinion. Like the propaganda of it all is just becoming so intense, and it's good that like we now have so many tools to share and to understand and to learn about those things. But yeah, like especially just on the AI side of things, like you now have to be so wary of, like, if you get a phone call from someone, it could sound like someone it could be an AI, like it could be someone using AI to like defraud you. To like, these things are just real things that are happening to people. Like every day I see news stories about people in Guelph like getting defrauded from money, there's just so many malicious actors out there, and that technology is like increasing at a speed that like who could keep up with it, right? Like it's not just out of touch people. Like you could be, I don't know. It's just, I'm glad to hear that that's an advocacy point.
It's a big one.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
It's a very big subject. It's difficult to get your head around it because there's so much happening across the world. But we just determined that we have to do something, and we can't do anything in terms of advocating for it in a big way unless we have a resolution.
Right.
And so that's what we're hoping to have supported and accepted by the end of the summer.
And the other thing that you mentioned, I mean, all the things you mentioned were interesting, but the UBI, the Universal Basic Income, I think, like, I'm glad that I'm hearing more about that, because I think that that's more of a conversation that we're going to have to reckon with, especially as AI becomes more prominent, as, like, if that continue to lead to job loss. Like, I mean, even here in Guelph, a couple months ago, I saw Guelph listed as like number 1 in terms of communities that were vulnerable to the the tariff threat coming from the U.S., coming like the threat to manufacturing. Like, it feels like that is something that our politicians, I'm just not really hearing it at that level, and I'm glad that groups like yours are starting to, because like that's how politicians are going to start talking about it more. Like I know Premier Ford canceled one of the bigger UBI experiments that was happening in Ontario. And like, that's a shame because there was interesting material coming out of that. And it just seems like, oh, we can't just bury our head in the sand and say like, oh, you know, it's a change, but we'll figure it out. When like, I'm not too sure we will figure out at least the way things used to be, sort of like, you know, the idea that there is work for everyone, or that there's like...
I agree with you. I agree completely with you. I think that the time has come for us to look at things through a different lens. And job loss is huge. It's not going to get any better, at least for the next 3 years, probably.
Yeah.
And I think that the government, you could say, is very busy with lots of other things right now. And so basic income is way down the list. But
yeah, like, I don't blame them that
doesn't dissuade us.
Exactly. Well, that's...
Not a bit.
That's good.
Not a bit.
And it's also like... It sounds kind of scary, but if we're needing to implement something like UBI, it's because we have the privilege of the idea that, like, if not everyone has to work, it's because we could still have all the productivity of the world without everyone needing to work, right? Like, if we have intelligent actor like AI, if we have machines that can do things, like, these things should be a boon to the human race, and they should be like freedom to us. But that's only going to be possible if we're able to like navigate some of those political pitfalls that could happen, right? That there's a steps towards like a more of a utopia, more of a freedom, more of a world where people could have the ability to do what they want and spend their time. But there's a lot that has to go there.
Yeah, I think we have to manage, we have to regulate, we have to look across the world and see what other countries are doing.
And it's more than just even in the money sense. Right now, so many people's self-esteem, their like sense of purpose,
their dignity.
Dignity is huge. Like, you know, I'm
social circle.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've struggled with that, where I've had job losses and stuff, and then suddenly you wake up, you know, the next day and you sort of have to reckon with like, you know, am I worth what I thought I was worth? Am I... Yeah, like, it's so easy to step forward in this life with, like, your title being your, like, your identity. And, and that's not to say that that's not okay for some people, because, like, that's fine. Like, your title and your job is often what you've dedicated your life towards. But, again, yeah, in a world where that kind of work isn't going to be guaranteed for people, and that, like... Not that it ever was guaranteed, but just less so. Like, yeah, I guess UBI is an entirely bigger conversation that we could have. But yeah,
it includes, you know, food insecurity and homelessness and mental health. I mean, there's a lot involved, and certainly a bigger subject than I could ever, you know, articulate to you. But I know that it's something that even in a small way we can approach our leaders, and we can do something about it. Something, even if it's small. That's the impact is awareness. Just to raise awareness, and to just do something, even on a scale that's not grandiose, just to do something as an individual is worthwhile.
Well, that's, and in some ways, that's all we can do, right? Is what impact do we have as individuals, and making other people more aware of it to the best that we can. Like, you know, very few of us are celebrities and have that kind of platform, but a lot of us do have friend circles, family, and just being educated and being able to like confidently bring up a topic like that. Or I think you also talked about like violence against women and things like that. Like, those are big topics, but just being able to like confidently broach that kind of topic in a social circle. If you're at like a book club that's not connected to this group, then yeah, that's huge, right?
Yeah, I always think you just show up, you speak up, and then you kind of stick with it over time, and that's all you can do. Nothing's going to change necessarily overnight. It's not a quick fix for any of this. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that you can't do something still.
And I think that's like the real root of advocacy work, right? Like, someone trying to sell a quick fix is probably like a politician, or someone trying to sell you something specific, like a capitalist, right? Like, if you're really doing community-driven policy work, then it's it is just one step at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked a bit about some of the organizations that you work with, but you work with a lot of other organizations and you support projects throughout through like community funding. How does the organization like go about choosing partners, and like what makes that partnership work well?
Well, we there are a couple answers to that question. We have a couple funds which our members contribute to with their fees, and one is to the scholarship fund, and one is to what we call community connections. And within community connections, we have a couple partnerships. One is a 3-year commitment to give them an annual stipend, and it's generally, it's not always a contest because often we only have one applicant, but what happens is that a member will put forth a charity's name that they may be involved with, not through us, but with their own involvement, who would be interested in working with us, and they would come and do a presentation. The club would vote on it, and then for 3 years we would provide a stipend, and they provide sort of annual updates. And in one instance, I think Sandra started this, was the Food for Kids, or now it's Keep Kids Fed. We would go and pack once a week as well. So we would give them an annual stipend, and then we would go and volunteer. A number of people would go and volunteer. So that's one aspect, and it's called Community Connections. We did Food for Kids. We did Bridges Out of Poverty. Right now we're in the middle of our Chalmers Community Service grant. And then we have something that is a one-time fund, and we also comes through a member who would bring forth an organization if they were interested. And so but that's generally less money, but we have the Guelph Youth Music Group applied a couple years ago, and this year the Salvation Army, we've been supporting their organization in providing support. I think they're having a tea for marginalized women.
Yes, and so behind the scenes info here,
and Lydia's involved.
Yeah,
in
so
yes.
Lydia, who's probably listening, thank you, Lydia, who helped make this connection.
Hi, Lydia.
As I think this has come up before, but I currently work with the Salvation Army. Actually, my last day with them is this coming Wednesday because I'm leaving the organization for a new position. But I have been working with the Salvation Army here in Guelph through this past year. Lydia is one of our biggest volunteers at the Community and Family Services. She's a fan of this podcast, and she kind of helped connect these dots. And I forget, was it some of you that I met that came through, or was it? Might have been Gwen.
It could have been Gwen.
Okay.
She's the president of our club.
Okay,
right?
that would make sense. Apologies to whoever was there. I was there and I met a few of them, but Lydia was there, and I think that must have been part of the community partnership.
When they presented the check, is that the day?
No, it was just like a couple people showed up, and I think we're just doing a little tour of the community. And I'm not going to pretend to remember whose name it was, but it was nice to meet them that day, and it's nice to have made this connection with the wider organization. So again, thank you, Lydia.
But I think the other part of what we do as an organization is in the education component. So we have a scholarship committee, and the scholarship committee's responsibility is really fiscal management of the funds that are attributed to it, and to work with organizations such as the community colleges or the university, depending on where we might want to go. We have we recently lost a member to our club, and she died prematurely, and we created a fund through the University of Guelph and the Guelph Rowing Club, which was recently presented, and our members supported that with their donations. Presently, I think we have 3 or 4 scholarships at the university in different areas. One is in engineering, and then we have
also Conestoga College.
And Conestoga, we have 2 or 3 there. One's in early childhood education, and the most recent one is for skilled women in trades.
Oh, cool.
So it's a very different perspective as well that the club takes in terms of scholarship and education.
That's interesting. It sounds like some of that is probably in like the roots of we talked about like the foundation of the club and like what the acronym used to stand for, but how it's kind of grown from just beyond the university specific and how it's education in general.
Education is definitely foundational.
Yeah.
I think we think of education as empowerment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because without it, it's very difficult to move forward in any meaningful way for many people. And also, I think education is financially, there are lots of barriers for women and marginalized individuals to access education. And so I think the scholarship fund helps to ease that, and I think it opens doors many times.
And I mean, that's only going to get even, more critical with some of the changes to OSAP that the provincial government announced just this week or recently, about more of it being loan-based versus the grant-based. And that's just been such a huge, so many things have gotten more expensive, and education, it used to be you could pay for your university college education with a summer job. And then even I went to school in the late 2000s-ish, and it required taking out huge amounts of loans and wasn't something you could just pay back by a summer job. And those sorts of grants and scholarships mean that it's not just the children of the wealthy and the elite who get that privilege and get that ability to better themselves, to reach new career opportunities, but also those sort of educations, it's enriching for all elements of your life, especially as a good liberal, when I say classically liberal, liberal arts education it's more than just the skills to acquire a job, and it's about broadening your horizons, right?
Critical thinking.
Yes, which is very important, no matter what you're going to do in life. So we had just my next question just touches upon this, but the CFUW Guelph has a long scholarship history. It also supports education through donations and endowments. What stories or needs are you responding to when you invest in those kind of awards? And you just touched upon this with recent members that had passed. And is there anything else along those lines that is important to the story?
So I think we respond to the difficulty that some people have with financing their education.
Yeah.
As we were talking about that.
And we work with, or the scholarship committee, I should say, works with their counterparts at each of the facilities at the University of Guelph and Conestoga College. So they become aware then of where the need is greatest, or if there's a program that could, the skilled women in trades, women in skilled trades, I think actually that's the proper way of saying it. That's a relatively new one that was brought to our attention about 4 or 5 years ago by Conestoga College, that would be a good place to put some new scholarship money into. So the scholarship committee works with the institutions to see the areas of greater need.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how, even though women are, nowadays they're not just there was a time where they were underrepresented in higher education. I know when I went to University of Guelph, there were more women than men. Especially, I was in the College of Biological Science, and that kind of leaned more heavily to female, more women. But there's still these gaps in some positions in the skilled trades, for example. There's these barriers both towards education, and then there's probably also barriers fitting in on job sites and things like that. These things, there's a lot of momentum in keeping things the way they were and keeping traditionally masculine or male jobs. I
don't think it's easy for women in skilled trades.
No.
I think that they find it's an uphill battle.
Yeah. But, and there's people that kind of want to keep it that way,
yes,
right? They don't want their boys' club to be opened up to women. They don't want to have to watch what they say, quote unquote, or
Yeah. So I'm glad we're supporting
I am too.
women
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that area.
And I think that we should mention that our club's at arm's length. We have charitable status, but the university decides who gets the awards.
Yes.
As does a
That's
cultural
important.
Oh, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
you're putting the money up in that, but there's that.
The decision-making process is entirely theirs.
Oh, nice. Well, that kind of helps you keep like that unbiased.
Unbiased.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
I understand that part of the group's focus has been supporting increasing women's, and not just women, but like women's and diverse representation in politics, while also promoting respectful public debate. What's the connection between representation and civic tone, and what can like regular people do to help?
Well, I think when leadership reflects the community, it changes the feel of the room. So you've got people of diversity, and then the conversation becomes more considered, more respectful. There are more perspectives that are expressed, and I think that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't disagreements, but I think the disagreements happen in a different way, and they're probably resolved in a different way because we see and consider the different perspectives that people have. And also, I think it helps to create an atmosphere where you're more respectful in your conversation and careful about how you're approaching the conversations. And if you should be like that in your everyday life as well. But that's so.
And I would say that sort of expectation and behavior is reflected in our monthly meeting and in all our groups, because certainly sometimes we'll have a speaker who a lot of people might find controversial,
Right.
And that's good, but in their question period and things they need to be respectful, and I think for the most part we've never had an issue. People live up to our expectations of them.
Well, I mean, I think that pushing the group into that kind of, it's almost like being comfortable with the discomfort, right? Like, and knowing that real progress and real growth. Sorry, I had to apologize in my last podcast. I have a very vocal cat. I used to have 2 cats. We recently had to put down one of them, so the one who's left is kind of, we think he's a little lonely. But yeah, on a previous episode, we talked about my old cat Sirius. Sirius is no longer with us, but his brother Orion still is, and he's being a little vocal outside the door. Sorry, I was going to say that, yeah, like we grow when we're pushed, and if you're hearing something in that sense that's like maybe trigger some of your like feelings of like, oh, this makes me uncomfortable, like, well, maybe that's just because you're like in a place of growth, right?
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I really
yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah.
And in a democracy, you should be able to feel comfortable expressing your opinions
Yeah.
as long as they're expressed respectfully.
And that's what you're saying, like that we talked about that disagreement. Like disagreement can be healthy, disagreement can be spirited. Like that's what debate and progress is. It's saying like, oh, I disagree, but let's talk about it. And that's the healthy way of doing it versus pushing those feelings down and then letting them kind of boil over at some point into actual fight. And then people are probably less likely to or less willing to have that debate, and they're more just like stuck in their way, right?
Absolutely.
You're hosting an International Women's Day community celebration. It'll be this March 8th, 2026, which I think will actually be in the past by the time this episode comes out. So sorry for promotional purposes, that's tough for you, but that's going to be at the Guelph Farmers Market. You can not say what can people expect, but this will be, if people are listening, it'll already have happened, but what are you expecting for that? And what do you hope someone who gets to go to that event kind of feels or gets after attending?
So first of all, I just make a small correction because the Guelph Wellington Women in Crisis is actually hosting
Oh, okay.
the event, and CFUW Guelph, along with our other partners, are supporting it.
Okay, perfect. So you're like a facilitator, but you're like enabling another group to...
So there will be, and it really is a celebration. It's a celebration of the progress that women have made, but it also is a reminder that there is still a lot of work to do. But it's a celebration. We're going to have children's arts and crafts. Nobody listening to this is going to be able to take advantage of that, but just for next year.
No, I mean, sometimes it's good to know, even just
there'll be
what
dancing and singing, and so it's definitely a celebratory event.
Oh, cool.
But we will also have some information packages in the room, in the market, set up for basic income to explain as best we can that, and we'll also have some information on CFUW Guelph, so who we are and any other information that people will want to know about that. So we hope people leave feeling connected to one another, encouraged and more hopeful for the future, and more aware of the issues that affect women and families. And so if someone wants to leave or is leaving and wanting to learn more, or wanting to support an organization or start a conversation, or take a small step toward a positive change in their life or someone else's life, that's what we hope for. That's what we want. That would be a positive outcome of International Women's Day.
Very cool. And I think that's a good place of hope and optimism in terms of like your organization, and sort of a good place to end things. Is there anything else that we didn't get to touch upon that any of you wanted to? I'm kind of opening this up to the four of you in the room, but anyone else?
I think that your idea of
I think I would just like to extend an invitation to anyone listening and that who would be interested in coming and seeing what a meeting is like. Our program, our roster of speakers for the year is listed on our website.
Oh, very cool. I'll have links to your website in the show notes if anyone wants. But
we meet at the fourth Tuesday of every month at 7 o'clock at the church on Water Street in the lower level.
Oh, cool. Okay. And your website, is it?
CFUW.org or CFUWGuelph.org.
Guelph, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you just Google the CFUW Guelph, you'll get to it,
comes
right?
up. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Well, thanks to all of you, Susan, Deb, Sandra, Sonia. Thanks to you. Thanks to Lydia for helping connect this, and thanks to the wider team that you're all part of for all the cool stuff that we talked about, that you're enabling and that you're connecting. I enjoy this conversation a lot, and
And thank you, Jordan, for inviting us.
Yeah.
It's been a very enjoyable afternoon. Thank you.
Yeah, I think is this your first podcast experience for most of you? Yeah, for some of you.
Novices.
Yeah.
Podcast novices. But we're all buddies. We decided we're going to be podcast buddies.
Yes.
Oh, cool. Maybe this is the first step. Like CFUW needs to start
Maybe we'll
a
have to start
podcast of
club,
your own.
a
Yeah.
podcast club, yeah.
I mean, eventually you'll get someone who will join who's like an avid podcaster who can start it, right? That I encourage anyone, if they want to do like Growing Guelph, but just to like focused on women in Guelph who are doing interesting things, like that would be a cool idea for a podcast. But thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Growing Guelph. I've been your host, Jordan Sloggett. Be sure to subscribe to us on social media, on your favorite podcast app, and if you have a recommendation for a future guest you'd like me to speak to, you can reach out to me at growingguelph@gmail.com.